Hello there, welcome back to another show. I'm going to continue with the Kubrick season, the very informal Kubrick season that comes and goes, that will keep coming and going over time. Yeah, I'm a wonder professional. I'm just amazing at making sure that I keep doing stuff really to the most professional level possible. I mean, you'll probably find that with my upcoming Herzog season as well. Well, it'll come and go. So I'm going to talk about my least favourite Kubrick film this time. And this should be interesting because I just genuinely do not like Spartacus. Spartacus is a film that I have massive issues with. And I don't think I'll ever change. It's a Kubrick film that he made as a director for hire. And you can tell because there's lots of stuff in there that is just jaw-droppingly 50s schmaltz amongst Kubrick doing very Kubrickian things. So it's a weird situation because there's elements early on that feel very Kubrick. Then there's elements that feel like there's some scenes that Kubrick you can just imagine cringing as he watched them get shot, and that are very 50s, 60s cinema, very much like it just feels wrong for Kubrick making these films. It feels like stuff he doesn't believe in, things that he does not want to do. Just feels like it's not him. It just doesn't feel like a Kubrick film. And then there's other bits that are very Kubrickian, and there's other bits that are kind of half Kubrickian, half something else. But the thing with this film is a bit of a schlockfest. It really is. And no matter how many actors they have who have good CVs, with Charles Lawn, with Laurence Olivier, Peter Ustinov, a lot of actors who have talent and have done a lot of good work. Well, so much they do, it is limited by the ambitions of the film. Even Kirk Douglas has been a lot better in a lot of films. And this one, you can feel him playing Kirk Douglas around Spartacus. You can feel him, really not stretch himself that much. But as soon as he gets to romance scenes, he's an autopilot a lot of the time. It just feels like he's just doing stuff you've seen him do before, And to be honest, I mean, we watched some of the Vikings where he's the villain, which is another schlockfest. That whole film feels much more alive because they know it's a schlockfest. They know it's utterly ridiculous. This film, it's taking itself so seriously. As if it means something, and it doesn't, because it doesn't take itself serious enough, so it's trying to look towards what the audience expects from it, and it's just annoying. It's just an annoying film in that way, because it could have been much better. And I think that's Kubrick's kind of concern with the film, is there was lots of stuff that didn't really answer properly, and it just became like melodrama. So it's a melodramatic 50s movie directed by someone who's slumming, and with a lot of actors who are slumming, because no one seems that passionate about this film. Everyone seems they're doing a good job on a professional film. They're getting paid, and they've one eye on the next project that they really want to do. That's what this film feels like, at least to me it does. But you can never tell because the costuming and everything else is so good that it's such a patina of professionalism that it means you can be fooled into thinking that they really cared when they didn't. It's just like they're a director who's very professional, he knows what he's doing, even when he's doing a subject he doesn't really care that much about. You have actors who know what they're doing, even though there's probably some scenes in there they're thinking, well, what the hell is this? You've just that feeling to the film as everyone's kind of doing a good job, but it's not the film they really feel put enough to make. Apart from Kirk Douglas, and even he has a lot of slumming Kirk Douglas scenes. So let's start with the good stuff. The good stuff is, the start. I mean, the funny thing in this film is it was originally directed by Anthony Mann, who was fired after about a week, or maybe even 5 days, and Kubrick was brought in to replace him. Kubrick had just done a film with Kirk Douglas called Paths of Glory, which is a marvellous film, where Kubrick was in charge for most part, and it was intellectually interesting film about compromising and war. And because Kirk Douglas knew Kubrick had talent, he brought him into this when he wasn't seen eye to eye with the director. Now we see the director's scenes that he shot, which was the scenes in the quarry. That's the most dynamic stuff in the film. And Anthony Mann went on to make El Cid, which is one of the great epics. El Cid is much better than Spartacus. El Cid is so much better than Spartacus in every possible way. And it makes you realise what Spartacus could have been if they had a director who really cared about it. But Kubrick, it was a professional job. And he even said that he thought the film didn't answer the questions that really interested him, so there's only so much he could do with it. So he was brought in, and you could tell the sequences he liked. He liked, obviously, the training sequences where the gladiators are trained in Ustinov's gladiatorial arena, and they actually get trained how to fight. And you see that Spartacus is the kind of number one, dog, really, and he's getting treated like an animal, and he's got a feeling that he's not an animal. He has to actually get through and destroy these people, and that's the best part of the film. It's like an escape movie where Kirk Douglas barely says a thing, but it's I say I'm going to get you, and that's the Kirk Douglas you like, and that's Kirk Douglas you wish you would see for the rest of the film, because that's really interesting, and Kubrick's really engaged. You have lots of sequences of Kirk Douglas been treated horribly, and you just see the eyes watching, the eyes getting ready to take apart the school, and you see that Kubrick's engaged with this idea of a man's trapped by this system, and you get the Romans coming, you see the Roman situation where they're building all this civilization, but they don't really care if the people are destroyed as they build the civilization. It's like the people are numbers to them. They're not people. The only people that are people to them are their close friends. There are other enemies who are have been dealt with, and there's two factions coming through Rome at the time. You've got the more moderate faction, the kind of liberal faction led by Charles Lawton, who thinks Rome should be civilised, and he's working towards keeping some civilization to Rome. There's Laurence Olivier, who's a more militaristic guy who thinks that Rome is falling and Rome should be defended and should be brought back up to its original principles. Even if that creates brutality, it'll protect Rome and keep it going. What I've just described makes it sound more interesting than it actually comes about. Because what happens is all you get is this vague infighting, and eventually Laurence Olivier wins. It's a really old film, so I mean, that's the one interesting thing in the film, is the bad guys win completely at the end. They destroy Spartacus, destroy everything, they win. But because it's a Hollywood film, they're very uncomfortable with that, and they have to try and find ways around that, and suggesting that the principal Spartacus will keep going, and even though we know it didn't. It's like Spartacus was the thing they created of revolt against slavery. Well, how did it last for another 2,000 years? Yeah, no, it's a really silly film in lots of ways. It, like a lot of Hollywood films at the time, it makes these proclamations that don't actually make any sense when you look at the actual reality of history and of people and how people actually are. It's just like a romanticised version that it's so romanticised it actually ignores any reality. It's just about, oh look, Kirk Douglas, he's brave, he must have inspired somebody. He didn't. But you get war sequences with Kirk Douglas. You get him leading the war, and you see the background here, the armies that fight with him. I see the leads with a brave look on his face, like he will prevail. Yeah, it doesn't really work out well for him. He kind of fails. He's kind of a failure. He doesn't prevail. But what he does do is he fights a lot of battles, and he inspires not history, but lots of Hollywood films that also bastardize history. I mean, this film was obviously watched by Mel Gibson a lot for Braveheart. Braveheart shares the exact same big star pretensions and vagueness and bloodlust of this film. I mean, this film isn't as bloody as Braveheart, but it's kind of... I'll move the way so you can see Kirk Douglas, because you need to see Kirk Douglas looking brave to know how brave Spartacus is, how brave Spartacus can be, how important Spartacus is this whole thing. Doesn't he look brave? When you look at Braveheart, doesn't Mel Gibson look brave in that? It's just a star system thing. That's all it is. It's ridiculous. It just takes history and makes you feel stupid because it's throwing down all of these inanities to you and saying, let's ignore how it actually happened, or let's ignore what we know about it. We know the system of control on that thing and how things evolved after it. No, let's ignore all that. Let's just have one brave man who fought against everybody. We'll have big fight scenes. And the fight scenes are wonderful. The fight scenes, again, were ripped off by Mel Gibson, Braveheart, and many other people. But I bring Braveheart up because Braveheart really seemed to be in love with this film. Because it structured itself so closely to it. And it's the battles, and the battles look good, and there's lots of scenes of people with a background of despair and horror and all of that stuff, and people lying all over the place, and bodies, and you have a lot of speeches about how the people need freedom and how people need to evolve, people need to escape from this slavery, which is obviously a horrible thing, but it's the 1950s slavery where everyone looks like they're very middle class. So you don't actually feel the horrors of slavery, you just feel the horrors of not being Kirk Douglas or Laurence Olivier. So it's kind of a ridiculous, campy film in lots of ways, and it's so un-Kubrick-like. And again, as I said before, you can feel him cringing at times. Anytime there's this love scene with Gene Simmons and Kirk Douglas tries to be charming in these scenes, and he comes across as a complete git. He's terrible in these scenes. He tries to be like human. And Kirk Douglas is much better at playing psychos and crazies and weirdos. Playing human is not his forte. But it has to be indulged, and he has to try and look witty, he has to try and look wise, as if he appreciates art and appreciates what everything that art can bring to cultures and stuff. But he's also a warrior, and you know, it's just ridiculous. I mean, as soon as he frees himself from slavery, he becomes a really boring character and a really annoying character. It's the weird thing is it's called Spartacus, but the scenes you don't want in this film are the Spartacus scenes after a certain point because he's really tedious. And Tony Curtis shows up as his sidekick for a lot of the film. I get a slave who escaped from Rome and who knows how to read and all the rest of it, so he can negotiate for them. But he's still Tony Curtis, looking completely lost within this bunch of English character actors and Kirk Douglas, and he just looks weird in this film. He just does not fit at all. But it's kind of, again, it's funny. It makes it all kind of campy and weird, and the whole film is that kind of weird train wreck feeling to it that somehow people still take seriously, even though it's obviously absurd and it's obviously a mess. The people who come across best really are Lawton and Olivier, because they're playing like these stereotypes, and they know what they're doing. And it's, even though the drama there is pretty prescribed to, we'll just try and make it as vague and make it seem as if they're talking about something even when they're not talking about anything that important. It feels more interesting because you have two actors who are well within their range of what they're good at, and they, even though the actors themselves hate each other, watching antagonism between them is fun, even though it is a bit bitchy most of the time. It's you know, it really does feel like spun lovers who are just like slapping against each other a lot, and it's ridiculous, but it's fun. And Olivier planning to defeat Spartacus is fun because you're kind of on his side at some point, even though he's a villain, because he's a much more enjoyable character than Kirk Douglas' Spartacus, even though Spartacus is meant to be the engaging figure. And that's the kind of thing that could be brought to it, was make the villains interesting, make the antagonists against the hero interesting. He did that, and he also brought out the actual action scenes, and he made the action scenes interesting, and where he did all these landscapes of all these Roman soldiers going down in blocks of squares, basically, of them all being like battalions, like focused on a battle very carefully, and the Romans have a plan how to do it, and they just start crushing through Spartacus troops, because Spartacus troops are basically mostly slaves who weren't taught to fight, and they have a lot of passion, but they don't have any real skill. And the Romans, once they get organised, destroy them. And it's just wonderful, those sequences. And anytime you see like Olivia walking through a pile of bodies or something, it's enjoyable watching them just be nasty and just be something that's inhumane. And that's the best bits of the film. That's the bits of the film kept me going. And I feel they kept Kubrick going as well, because there's so many melodramatic things, like Spartacus and his wife and his son are found by Olivier, and then Ustinov has to sneak them out with the help of Lawton. It's all soap opera stuff. It's all utterly ridiculous. It's nothing to do with actual fight. And they've all this stuff about the pirates who the slaves paid to help get them off for Italy, betraying them for some reason, even though they hate the Romans. It doesn't make any sense, and you're just like, it worked well as a kid, but as an adult you're thinking, this just doesn't quite track. And there's lots of stuff like that in the film that doesn't quite track. Like, a Kubrick film would have been much more locked down. In this film, it's like, because we want this sequence here, that's why we're doing it. And we have to make sure that Spartacus doesn't look like a psychopath, even though he's more fun as a psychopath. It's that kind of feeling throughout the film, is like nothing interesting has actually been shown. It's just a lot of visuals for visual sake. It's not really focused on what's interesting about the situation. But it looks pretty. And Kirk Douglas gets lots of close-ups. Look at that chin. Doesn't deserve a close-up. Doesn't deserve its own little thing. Its own little variety of shots throughout it. Yes, it's the problem with the film. Is Kirk Douglas is the problem with the film. He's the main problem with the film. He's the person who got it made, but it had to be the centre of it. Kind of like Braveheart, where the least interesting thing about Braveheart was Mel Gibson. In this one, the least interesting thing about this film is Spartacus. It's just like everything else is more interesting than him, and it just becomes a problem for the film. So why are we watching this film? Because it's Spartacus, but why are we watching Kirk Douglas in this? Well, what's going on here? And it just becomes an annoyance watching him take apart the film just for his own ego, just to make sure he always looked as if he was justified, like this is a brave soul. I mean, there's an end sequence, I'm Spartacus, that's famous sequence that's actually parodied a lot. And it does work because it's well directed. But the score in this, Spartacus North, there's moments when it's great, and there's other moments where it's utter trash, utter dreck. And the whole film is just, it's so un-Kubrick-like. It just feels, you can just tell that half of this film he's just surviving. It wasn't, there's so much there that wasn't in his control, and I kind of wish I'd seen a film out of his control. This subject, because it's genuinely interesting, a slave revolt and the different political forces that manipulate it. That's an interesting idea, but as soon as you get the sentimental star power of someone who's in charge of the power of the whole army of the film, who's trying to make himself look good and creates this sentimentality around this character that's actually kind of very patronising, and it just is this mess. It's a very entertaining mess, but it's a bit long, but it's still the film of Kubrick I'd watch least. I just don't particularly like Spartacus. Spartacus just feels like, I'd much rather watch Fear and Desire, which is a genuine mess, but it was a genuine mess made by directors learning the craft. This one just feels like he was just dealing with the star system. You feel this is the film that made him think, I'm not doing that again ever. I'm just never doing that again. This is ridiculous. So, that's Spartacus. Enjoy it if you want, but I can't have much respect for it. It just feels like a mess. It just feels a mess. The same way a lot of these other epics were a mess. It was just like, no one in the script had a clue, and this is when actor producers and their vanity was really at a peak. So, Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm back to another one, but this is Spartacus, the Kubrick video I was least looking forward to making. Okay, bye for now.